The restaurant was packed with family and friends celebrating my college graduation. I should have felt proud. 4 years of hard work, late-night studying, and finally holding my degree. But as I looked around the table, all I felt was dread. Mom raised her wine glass and smiled at everyone. "I'm so proud of both my daughters," she began. My heart lifted for just a moment. Maybe tonight would be different. Deborah has always been the smart one, marrying her wonderful fiancé Brandon. She knows how to secure her future. Everyone nodded and clapped. My sister beamed. Then Mom turned to me. Her eyes were cold as ice. The whole table went quiet, waiting for her words about me. "And Annabelle," she paused dramatically, "you'll always be the failure child if you don't marry rich." My whole body froze. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Around the table, people looked down at their plates. Nobody defended me. Nobody said anything. The silence felt heavier than her actual words. I forced a smile and picked up my water glass with shaking hands. Inside, I was dying. This was supposed to be my graduation dinner, my moment to shine. Instead, I'd been labeled the family failure in front of everyone who mattered to me. Mom continued talking like nothing had happened. She turned back to Deborah and started gushing about her upcoming wedding. "Brandon comes from such good family money. That's how you secure your future, sweetheart." Everyone around the table nodded in agreement. Aunt Patricia smiled and said, "Deborah always was the smart one." Uncle Mike raised his glass. "Here's to marrying well." They all laughed and clinked glasses. I sat there like a ghost, watching my family celebrate my sister's engagement while completely ignoring my college graduation. For years of school, student loans I'd have to pay back, and nights working part-time jobs to afford textbooks. None of that mattered. What mattered was that Deborah had found a rich man to marry. What mattered was that I was still dating Paul, a teacher who made barely enough to pay his own bills. What mattered was that in my mother's eyes, I was already a disappointment at 22. Deborah looked across the table at me with pity in her eyes. She knew Mom's words were harsh, but she didn't say anything. She just squeezed Brandon's hand tighter and smiled when people congratulated her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them all what I really thought. Instead, I smiled through the tears building in my eyes and pretended everything was fine. The ride home was silent. Paul drove while I stared out the window, Mom's words playing over and over in my head. "You'll always be the failure child." The sentence wouldn't leave me alone. "She didn't mean it," Paul said quietly, breaking the silence. But we both knew she did mean it. This wasn't the first time Mom had made it clear that she thought I was wasting my life. She'd been dropping hints for months about how I should find someone more suitable than a teacher. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Paul pulled over and turned to face me. He took my hand in both of his and squeezed gently. "Hey, look at me." I turned to meet his kind brown eyes. He'd been nothing but supportive through college. He'd helped me study, brought me coffee during late-night cramming sessions, and celebrated every small victory with me. "One day, we'll prove her wrong," he whispered with determination in his voice. "We'll build something together that has nothing to do with anyone else's money. We'll show her that success doesn't come from who you marry." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that love and hard work could be enough. But Mom's voice was louder than his promises. The doubt had already started growing inside me like poison. As we drove the rest of the way home, memories flooded back. All the times Mom had made me feel small and worthless. All the comments about being a waste of potential, and the broke one, and the embarrassment. When I was 16, she told her book club that I'd never amount to anything because I wanted to study art instead of business. When I was 18 and chose a state school over an expensive private college, she'd said I was settling for mediocrity. During my sophomore year, when I brought Paul home for the first time, she'd pulled me aside afterward. "You can do better than a teacher, Annabelle. Don't limit yourself to someone so ordinary."
But Paul wasn't ordinary to me.
He was kind and funny and genuinely cared about making the world better through education. He volunteered at literacy programs on weekends and stayed late to help struggling students. He might not have money, but he had character. Mom couldn't see that. All she saw was his modest apartment and his 10-year-old car. All she cared about was that he couldn't buy me expensive jewelry or take me on fancy vacations. Those words had stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Every time I looked in the mirror, I heard her voice telling me I wasn't enough. Christmas dinner that year was even worse. The whole extended family gathered around Mom's dining room table. Deborah and Brandon had just gotten engaged, and Mom couldn't stop talking about the wedding plans. The venue alone cost more than most people make in a year, Mom bragged to my cousins. But Brandon's family spares no expense. That's what happens when you marry into real money. She raised her wine glass high in the air. Let's toast to Deborah's real success. She's finally made something of herself. Everyone lifted their glasses, except me. I sat there with my hands in my lap, watching my mother celebrate my sister, like she'd just won the Nobel Prize. All Deborah had done was say yes to a proposal. I'd graduated college with honors, but that didn't deserve a toast. Then Mom turned to me with that familiar look of disappointment. Some people just settle for scraps, she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. That was it. I couldn't take another second. I stood up so fast my chair almost fell over. Excuse me, I managed to say before rushing to the bathroom. I locked the door and cried until my eyes were red and swollen. Through the door, I could hear the family continuing their celebration like nothing had happened. Like I didn't even matter enough to pause the conversation. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I made myself a promise. I stared at the ceiling and whispered the words that would change everything. I will never give her the satisfaction of being right. I was tired of being the family disappointment. I was tired of watching Deborah get praised for finding a rich husband while my actual accomplishments were ignored. I was tired of feeling worthless every time I walked into a family gathering. I will work until I have something she can never take away, I promise myself. Something that proves my worth has nothing to do with who I marry. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it yet. I had student loans to pay, rent to cover, and barely enough money for groceries. But I had something Deborah didn't have. Hunger. I had the desperate need to prove everyone wrong. Paul was asleep next to me, and I watched his peaceful face in the moonlight. He believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. He saw potential where my family saw failure. The anger I felt toward Mom was real, but it was also fuel. Every cruel comment, every dismissive look, every time she'd made me feel small, I would use all of it to drive myself forward. I was done being the failure child. I was done settling for scraps. From that night forward, I would build something incredible, and I would do it without marrying rich or taking anyone's handouts. The grind started immediately. I took a second job waitressing at a diner downtown, working nights after my day job at a marketing firm. My tiny apartment felt more like a prison than a home, but I couldn't afford anything better. Most nights, I was so exhausted I'd fall asleep still wearing my work clothes. I lived on instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches to save every dollar possible. While Deborah was planning her expensive wedding, I was skipping dinners to put money in my savings account.
Paul worried about me.
You're pushing yourself too hard, he'd say when he found me passed out at my kitchen table with design sketches spread everywhere. But I couldn't slow down. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard Mom's voice calling me the failure child. Every time I thought about giving up, I pictured her smug face at Christmas dinner. I started freelance graphic design work on weekends, taking any project I could find. Birthday party invitations, small business logos, social media graphics. Nothing was too small if it paid money. My laptop became my best friend, and coffee became my main food group. Friends stopped calling because I never had time to hang out. But I didn't care. I had a goal, and everything else was distraction. If you're enjoying this story of proving family wrong, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories like this one. 6 months into my insane work schedule, something amazing happened. One of my design projects went viral online. It was a simple logo I'd created for a small coffee shop, but somehow it caught fire on social media. Suddenly, my phone was ringing constantly. New clients wanted logos, websites, business cards, and marketing materials. For the first time in my life, people were willing to pay good money for something I'd created with my own hands and brain. I quit the diner job and focused entirely on my design business. The marketing firm barely noticed when I started working remotely more often. I was making more money from freelance work than my regular salary anyway. My little apartment started filling up with art supplies and a better computer setup. I bought a comfortable chair for my desk and splurged on decent coffee instead of the cheap instant stuff. Small luxuries that felt like huge victories. Paul was so proud of me. "I told you we'd prove her wrong," he said, spinning me around in my living room after I landed my biggest client yet. For the first time in years, I didn't dread paying rent. I had money in my savings account and a business that was growing every week. I wasn't rich yet, but I was building something real. Something that belonged to me and nobody else. Mom had no idea what was happening in my life because we barely talked anymore. That was fine with me. Let her keep thinking I was a failure. Then Mom sent a text that made my blood boil. It was a group chat with the whole family, showing pictures from a house tour she'd taken with Deborah and Brandon. "Touring Deborah's dream house today," the message read. "So beautiful and elegant. Wish Annabelle could afford something like this someday." The photos showed a gorgeous two-story house with a big front porch, huge windows, and a perfectly manicured lawn. It looked like something from a magazine. The kind of house I'd dreamed about owning since I was a little girl. But it was the caption that really got to me. "Wish Annabelle could afford something like this someday." Not "hope Annabelle finds happiness," or "can't wait for Annabelle to succeed." Just a reminder that I was too poor and pathetic to ever live somewhere nice. My chest burned with anger as I stared at those pictures. Deborah and Brandon were standing in the grand foyer, holding hands and smiling like they owned the place already. Mom was beaming behind them, probably already imagining herself visiting her successful daughter in her mansion. I screenshot every single photo and saved them to my phone. I studied the address shown in the realtor's sign in the background. I memorized every detail of that house, from the stone columns to the wraparound porch. One day, I whispered to myself, staring at the pictures. One day, I'll show you exactly what I can afford. 3 weeks later, my phone rang while I was working on a logo design. The caller ID showed my bank's number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was about some fee or problem with my account. "Miss Annabelle?" the voice said when I picked up. "This is Carlos from First National Bank. I'm calling about your account and credit history." My heart sank. Had I overdrafted something? Was there a problem with my business account? "With your recent income records and credit score, you qualify for our premium home loan program," Carlos continued. "We'd like to discuss your options for property investment." I nearly dropped the phone. A home loan? Me? The girl who'd been eating ramen noodles for months to save money? "How much are we talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Based on your income from the design business and your savings history, we could approve you for up to $400,000. $400,000. For the first time in my life, owning property didn't feel like an impossible dream. It felt like something I could actually do. I made an appointment to meet with Carlos the next day. As soon as I hung up, I pulled out my phone and looked at those pictures of Deborah's dream house again. I wondered how much a house like that would cost. I wondered if it was even for sale. Most importantly, I wondered if Mom's failure child could actually afford her daughter's dream house. The engagement party was everything Mom had dreamed of. Deborah's future in-laws rented out the ballroom at the fanciest hotel in town. There were flowers everywhere, a live string quartet, and waiters serving champagne on silver trays. I wore my best dress, which suddenly felt cheap and plain compared to Deborah's designer gown. She looked like a princess, floating around the room accepting congratulations from everyone we'd ever known. Mom was in her element, playing the role of proud mother of the bride-to-be. She told everyone who would listen about the wedding plans, the honeymoon to Europe, and of course, the dream house. "They're looking at the most beautiful property," she gushed to my aunts. "It's everything I ever wanted for one of my daughters. A real home for a real family." She kept talking about that house like it was already theirs. The stone columns, the grand staircase, the master suite with the walk-in closet bigger than most people's bedrooms. She described every detail like she'd memorized them. Brandon's parents are helping with the down payment, of course, Mom added. That's what family does when they're truly successful. I stood at the edge of the conversation, invisible as always. Nobody asked about my life or my growing business. All that mattered was Deborah's rich fiancé and their perfect future together. But as the night went on, I started hearing whispers. Conversations that stopped when I got too close. Worried looks between Brandon's parents and Deborah. I was getting another glass of punch when I overheard Brandon's mother talking to my aunt in hushed tones. The market hasn't been kind to his investments, she was saying. We're hoping things turn around before the wedding. What kind of investments? My aunt asked. Real estate mostly. He borrowed heavily to flip houses, but several deals fell through. The debt is significant. My ears perked up. Brandon had debts? Big ones? Later, I overheard two of Brandon's friends talking near the bathroom. Dude is in way over his head, one of them said. His dad had to bail him out twice this year.
I don't know how long that can last.
What about the house Deborah keeps posting about? The other friend asked. They can't afford it. Not even close. Brandon's been telling her they're working on financing, but his credit is shot. That house is never going to happen. I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt bad for Deborah. She had no idea her perfect future was built on lies. But another part of me felt something else entirely. Opportunity. If Brandon couldn't afford that dream house, maybe someone else could. Someone like his soon-to-be sister-in-law who'd been quietly building a business and saving money. The next Monday morning, my phone rang while I was sketching ideas for a new client's restaurant logo. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Is this Annabelle? A woman's voice asked. This is Patricia from Homes and Gardens Realty. I got your number from Carlos at First National Bank. He mentioned you might be interested in property listings. My heart started racing. Yes, I've been thinking about buying a house. Perfect timing, Patricia said. I have a property that just came on the market this morning. It's a beautiful 2-story home with stone columns and a wraparound porch. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and the most gorgeous grand foyer you've ever seen. She was describing Deborah's dream house. The exact house from Mom's group chat photos. The owners need to sell quickly due to financial changes, Patricia continued. They're motivated to negotiate. Would you be interested in a showing? I could barely breathe. What's the asking price? $375,000. But between you and me, they'd probably accept an offer in the mid-300s. It was perfect, right in my budget range, assuming the bank approved my loan application. I'd like to see it, I heard myself saying. As soon as possible. How about this afternoon? I can meet you there at 2 o'clock. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for 10 minutes. Was I really thinking about buying my sister's dream house? The house Mom had been bragging about for weeks?
Yes.
Yes, I was. That afternoon, I met Patricia at the house. It was even more beautiful in person than in the photos. The stone columns were elegant and strong. The wraparound porch looked perfect for morning coffee and evening sunsets. The previous owners put a lot of love into this place, Patricia said as she unlocked the front door. Unfortunately, they overextended themselves financially and need to sell fast. This wasn't just a house.
It was a statement.
It was proof that I could build something amazing without marrying rich or depending on anyone else's money. I want to make an offer, I told Patricia before we'd even finished the tour. Are you sure? Don't you want to think about it? Talk it over with your husband or boyfriend. I'm sure. And this decision is mine alone. We drove straight to her office, where I signed more papers than I'd ever signed in my life. Loan applications, purchase agreements, inspection waivers, everything needed to make this happen fast. I drained my savings account for the down payment and closing costs. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I was risking everything I'd worked for, but I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. 3 days later, Patricia called with news. Congratulations, Annabelle. Your offer was accepted. You're going to be a homeowner. 2 weeks later, I got the keys. I drove to the house alone, wanting to experience this moment in private. My hands were shaking as I put the key in the lock and turned it. The door opened, and I stepped inside my home. My house. My dream that I'd made real through hard work and determination. I walked slowly through every room, touching the walls, running my fingers along the granite countertops, looking out the huge windows at my backyard. This was mine. All of it. In the master bedroom, I stood in front of the mirror in the walk-in closet. Failure child, huh? I whispered to my reflection. I thought about Mom's group chat. I wasn't ready to share the news yet, though. I wanted to plan this perfectly. I wanted to time the reveal for maximum impact. For now, it was enough to sit on my front porch steps and look out at my perfectly manicured lawn. My house. My success. My proof that everything Mom had said about me was wrong. I called Paul and told him to come over. I have something amazing to show you, I said. He was going to be so proud of what I'd accomplished. The next Sunday, I joined the family for dinner at Mom's house like nothing had changed. She was in full bragging mode about Deborah's upcoming wedding and their house hunting adventures. Brandon's parents are being so generous with the down payment, Mom said, passing around the mashed potatoes. Soon, we'll all get to visit them in that gorgeous mansion we looked at. She turned to the aunts and uncles around the table. You should see this place. Stone columns, wraparound porch, the most elegant grand staircase you've ever seen. It's everything I ever dreamed of for one of my daughters. Deborah looked uncomfortable. She'd been quieter lately, and I wondered if she was starting to learn the truth about Brandon's financial situation. People will finally respect this family when Deborah moves into that house, Mom continued. We'll finally have something to be truly proud of. I bit my tongue and kept eating my pot roast. Around the table, everyone nodded and made impressed sounds. They all believed that Deborah's rich husband was going to give the whole family some kind of elevated status. That house represents everything our family should be, Mom declared dramatically. Success, elegance, the reward for making smart choices in life. I almost choked on my water. Smart choices? Like working 80 hours a week to build a business? Like saving every penny for years? Like taking risks and betting on myself? It must be nice to have that kind of security, I said innocently. Living somewhere so beautiful. Mom smiled patronizingly. Someday you'll understand, Annabelle. When you're older and wiser. Little did she know, I already understood perfectly. After dinner, as everyone was getting ready to leave, I spoke up casually. Hey, why don't you all come see something next weekend? I'd love to have everyone over. Mom looked confused. Over where? Your apartment. Just somewhere special, I said with a mysterious smile. Trust me, you'll want to see this. Deborah perked up immediately. Ooh, are you and Paul finally moving in together? Is this like a housewarming party? I just smiled and shrugged. It's a surprise, but I promise it's worth the drive. Everyone started talking at once, speculating about what I wanted to show them. Mom looked skeptical, probably wondering what her failure child could possibly have to show off. Should we bring anything? Aunt Patricia asked. Just yourselves, I said. I'll text everyone the address on Saturday. As I drove home, I could barely contain my excitement. I'd been planning this moment for weeks, imagining everyone's faces when they realized what I'd accomplished. Paul was waiting at my apartment with takeout Chinese food. Are you really going to do this? He asked. I'm really going to do this, I confirmed. It's time they learned exactly who the failure child has become. He kissed my forehead. I'm so proud of you. Your mom is going to eat her words. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Saturday morning, I sent the group text with the address. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with confused responses. This is that expensive neighborhood, Deborah texted. What are we doing there? Are you house-sitting for someone? Mom asked. I didn't respond to any of the questions. Let them wonder. That afternoon, I watched from my front window as the family caravan pulled into my driveway. Mom's face was pressed against her car window, staring up at the house with wide eyes. I saw her mouth the words, "Oh my God," as she realized where they were. Deborah got out of her car first, looking around in complete confusion. Annabelle, why are we at this house? This is the one I showed you in those pictures. Mom climbed out slowly, her face going pale. This is impossible. This house isn't for sale anymore. Someone bought it weeks ago. Tyler and his wife were looking back and forth between me and the house like they couldn't make sense of what was happening. The aunts and uncles were whispering to each other on the sidewalk. I stepped onto the front porch, holding my keys in plain sight. "Welcome to my home," I said clearly, so everyone could hear. The silence was deafening. Mom's mouth fell open. Deborah stood frozen next to her car. Even the neighbors had stopped what they were doing to watch the drama unfolding in my driveway. "This is my house," I repeated, just to make sure everyone understood. "I bought it. I own it." I unlocked the front door and held it open. "Would you like to come in and see what your failure child has accomplished?" Nobody moved at first. They just stood there staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. The house they'd been dreaming about, bragging about, planning their futures around, it was mine. "How is this possible?" Mom whispered, finally finding her voice. "Hard work," I replied simply. "Something you told me I'd never understand." One by one, they started walking toward the porch. Deborah was crying, though I couldn't tell if it was from shock, disappointment, or something else. The aunts and uncles looked impressed but confused. I led them through the grand foyer Mom had described so lovingly, past the elegant staircase, through the gourmet kitchen, into the spacious living room with its huge windows overlooking the backyard. "This is really yours?" Uncle Mike asked, running his hand along the granite countertop. "Every square inch," I confirmed. "Bought and paid for with money I earned from my design business." Mom was silent, walking through the rooms like she was in a trance. She touched the walls, looked out the windows, stood in the spots where she'd imagined Deborah living. "But how did you afford this?" Tyler asked. "Houses like this cost $350,000, I interrupted, plus closing costs. I saved every penny for 3 years and built a business successful enough to qualify for the loan." The reality was sinking in. I hadn't married rich. I hadn't gotten help from anyone's parents. I'd done this entirely on my own. We made it to the master bedroom before Mom finally exploded. She turned to face me, her cheeks red with anger and humiliation. "This is selfish," she screamed. "You knew Deborah wanted this house. You knew this was her dream. How could you steal it from her?" "Steal it?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I bought it fair and square with my own money. Deborah never even made an offer." "Because she was working on financing," Mom shouted back. "You mean because Brandon can't afford it?" I said calmly. "Because he's in debt up to his eyeballs and his credit is destroyed." Deborah gasped. Apparently, she hadn't known the full truth about her fiancé's financial situation. "You don't understand," Mom continued, her voice getting higher. "This house was supposed to represent our family's success. It was supposed to show everyone that we'd made it." "Our family's success?" I repeated. "What did our family do to earn this house? Did you work 80-hour weeks? Did you build a business from nothing? Did you save every penny for years?" She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. "I did that," I continued.
Me.
The failure child. I built this success myself, without marrying anyone, without anyone's help. Mom looked around the room desperately, like she was searching for some way to make this about anyone other than me. Some way to avoid admitting that I'd accomplished something she'd said was impossible. I took a deep breath and said the words I'd been saving for years. "You call me the failure child for not marrying rich. You said I'd never amount to anything because I chose love over money." Mom's face crumpled, but I wasn't finished. "Well, here I am. In the house you said I could never afford. Living the life you said was impossible for someone like me. I built this without marrying rich. I built this without you." The room was completely silent except for Deborah's quiet crying in the corner. "Every time you called me a failure, every time you said I was settling for scraps, every time you made me feel worthless, I used that pain as fuel. I turned your disappointment into determination. I walked to the huge window, overlooking the backyard.
My backyard.
This house doesn't represent our family success, I said, turning back to face everyone. It represents my success. My hard work. My refusal to accept your definition of failure. Mom opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. I didn't steal Deborah's dream. I continued. I built my own dream. The dream you said was impossible for the failure child. Tyler stepped forward. Annabelle, we never meant. Yes, you did. I cut him off. You all meant exactly what you said. And that's okay. Because your doubt made me stronger. I looked each family member in the eye. Now you know what I'm really worth. Now you know what the failure child was capable of all along. I walked toward the bedroom door, expecting them to follow me out. But Mom wasn't done yet. This doesn't change anything, she called after me. You're still alone. You still chose some nobody teacher over building a real future. I stopped and turned around slowly. Paul was standing in the doorway. He'd arrived while we were talking and heard everything. You're wrong about that too, I said calmly. Paul helped me become the person who could accomplish this. He believed in me when no one else did. He's worth more than all of Brandon's family money combined. I walked past Mom, past all of them, and took Paul's hand. Together, we headed for the front door. Where are you going? Deborah called after me. This is my house, I replied without turning around. I can leave whenever I want. You all can show yourselves out. I left them standing in my master bedroom, in the house they'd thought would belong to someone else. Let them process the reality of what I'd accomplished. Let them figure out how to explain to their friends that the failure child had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Paul and I walked out to the front porch and sat on the steps. Behind us, I could hear confused voices and footsteps as my family wandered through my house. How does it feel? Paul asked quietly. Like justice, I replied. Finally, like justice. Paul and I spent the evening on my front porch, watching the sunset over my perfectly manicured lawn. My house, my achievement, my proof that success comes from hard work, not from who you marry. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed it. I'd proven that success isn't about who you marry or how much money your family has. It's about working hard, believing in yourself, and refusing to accept other people's limitations. I own this house. I own my business. I owned my future. And nobody could ever take that away from me. If this story moved you and showed you what's possible when you refuse to accept others' limitations, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories like this one. Share this story with anyone who's ever been called a failure by their own family. Sometimes the greatest success comes from proving the doubters wrong. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.